Okay, hello there. So we're gonna keep working on this this turtle here. So what I did, can you see I added a pattern here to the shell of the turtle? So I did that using a clipping mask. So I'll kind of just do a different version of it right up here, so you can kind of see how I did that for the shell. So my sea turtle layer currently is unlocked or is locked. So I'll just click the lock symbol and unlock it. And we will make a new shape to represent that shell. About the same. All right, remember, so currently this shape I just made, the shape that is selected right here, it has no stroke and no fill on it. So remember, whatever shape is selected, look down here to see the characteristics of that shape, basically if it has a stroke or a fill on it. Okay, so I'm just going to turn on the basics there. I will use my eyedropper tool again. It's the letter I. Switch that. I'm going to suck up the characteristics of that shell. So now it's the same blue. So what I did for that is I just made a very quick pattern. Let's change this around. And I made it with a dark blue, just a single line here, with a dark blue stroke. I'll make it a little thicker so it's a little easier to see. There we go. So then after I made that, I just copy and pasted that a few times. And I'm just basically making my own kind of plaid checker pattern there. Okay. That should be long enough. And then what I did after that, since I already made all these lines, I will just copy all of these. So on Mac, I'm just holding my Option key, and that will let me drag out a copy of that. I believe on Windows, it is the Control key. So just hold that Option key and that copy and paste everything. So then I can rotate this, resize it, and put it on top there. So now I have a nice little kind of plaid pattern there. But right now these are all individual strokes, so it should be easier so I don't lose track of this thing. I want to just group all of these together. So I'm just going to select them all and right click and say group. Okay. So remember also, grouping things is a good way to keep things organized if you know you're creating shapes or anything like that that you want to stay together. I missed one of those. One of the strokes here. There we go. Now group. Okay, so now that this is grouped, you can look here in your layers panel again, and here's the group right here. So I can rename this like plaid pattern. Let's just call it pattern. There we go. So now what I'll do is, now I want to take this group here, I want to put it on top of this shell and make a clipping mask. Okay, so the steps to do that are a little tricky. What I'm first going to do is I'm going to copy and paste this shell right there. Okay, I will put my plaid on top of that first shell shape. And this one here I want to be on top of everything, because whatever you want to be in that clipping mask, it has to be on top. So here in my layers, I'm going to drag this shell up above the pattern. So now I have one shell shape here, the pattern, and then the path here. So always keep this layers open or keep it handy, because this is the best way to figure out where your shapes are, which ones are selected, where your groups are. Because the more you start to create, look, I already have this many shapes for just the turtle. So the more complicated designs you have, the more shapes you're going to have, obviously, and the more it is important to keep them organized. So I'm going to place this so it overlaps right on top of that shell shape. So now everything is going to clip to this top shell shape, including the original shell and the pattern, and the top shell should disappear. So let's see if this works. Select all of those, then right click and say make clipping mask. Where did it go? Make clipping mask right here. So now, there you go. So now I have my shell shape there. just as this pattern of the shell. And then it is all now here, you see this is a clip group right there. So this is all one group. If I expand this, I see there's the original shape, the pattern, and the path right there, and the original shell shape. So if I want to put a stroke around here, again, a little tricky. So I'm going to copy and paste that original shell path. I'm going to take this out of the clipping group and put it on top. Let's put it below. Okay. Oops. Can I take this out of the clipping group? There it goes. Okay. Again, this is, so now I'm going to move that shell shape back on top of the clipping group. So this shape here is out of the clipping group. I dragged it out of the clipping group from here in the layers. The clipping group is there with the shell. I can rename this one shell pattern or shell with pattern. And now to put a stroke around it, I have this shape created right here on top. But this now is just a fill with no stroke, so I'm going to flip it around and make this a little bit darker stroke around it. Let's make it a little thicker as well so we can see it better. And now it has a stroke around it as well. Let's go ahead and make this just a little darker so it's slightly different than the value and color of the pattern. There we go. And now again, if I move one, they won't necessarily both move, so I want to group these together again, select them both, the clipping group and the stroke for the outline of the shell, right click and say make or group. So now again, that is now reflected down here. Now if I expand this group, there's a lot of things in it. So here's the clipping mask within that group and the original group of the pattern, which has a whole bunch of strokes in it. So keeping everything organized with groups inside of your layers is going to be a really good way to ensure that your document doesn't get too complicated, and that if you need to re-edit shapes or move them around, you can do that with the just by organizing and finding different shapes here in your layers. Okay. So the next video I will show you guys how to use the shape builder tool to add some of these darker shadows on the turtle. Okay? Okay, that is it for this one. Next one we'll do some work with the shape builder tool.